Hey everybody, I'm Will Garcia.
And I'm Josh Earl.
And together, we're the Hoops Guys. In continuing our team preview series, we started with the Cleveland Cavaliers, link to the video right here. We are talking today about one of our favorite teams. Want to give it away, Josh?
It's my favorite team.
Yeah, it's my favorite team too. I'm not even going to try to pretend to be neutral on it.
It is, as my jersey denotes,
Drumroll,
the
please.
San Antonio Spurs, the defending champs.
Ugh. Yeah, no, they're awesome. Okay.
Yes.
And because they are awesome, they played awesome. They went 62-20. Probably could have gone 82-0. No, I'm just messing. They could have gone 83-0. They're just that good.
I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah, if Tim Duncan wasn't on like a minute restriction thing. No. No, but seriously, they were a really, really good team last year because, they won the championship. Gregg Popovich is still a genius. Same old, same old. So
R.C. Buford is the best.
R.C. Buford
GM.
is one of the best GMs ever.
Yep.
Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony. Like, that entire roster, top to bottom.
Oh, yeah. My favorite roster, my favorite team. I think they run their organization better than any organization in all of sports, at least the North American Major League sports.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're Spurs fans. Deal with
Yes.
it. No, I'm just messing.
Unrepentant Spurs fans.
No, we love the Spurs. They're
Yes.
just yeah. Okay. Homerism aside, it's actually not even homerism because none of us live in Texas.
No, we don't live anywhere near
Michigan
San
dude.
Antonio. We just love good basketball.
You know what? I'm a
and
Michigan
that's
dude,
what the
and
Spurs
I'm okay
do.
with Robert Horry hitting that shot.
Fair enough.
That I shouldn't be able to say that, but it's the Spurs. You have to be okay with saying that. They're the Spurs.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, biases aside, what did they do well last year, other than everything?
Well, it kind of was everything in a way.
Everything.
They were really good defensively and offensively. Defensively, they really did a good job at forcing teams to use a lot of shot clock and to settle for fairly inefficient shots. Ian Levy at Nylon Calculus has this great thing called XPPS, which
we'll
is
put a link to it.
Expected points per shot, and it basically measures the value of your shot selection as well as your opponent's shot selection. And the Spurs were first in the league in defensive XPPS.
Yeah.
They were third in actual points per shot, and they were fourth in defensive efficient field goal per
that
effective field goal percentage
thing.
They just crushed it defensively.
Yeah,
they didn't really force a lot of turnovers. They're not one of those teams that's blitzing pick and rolls often, trying to generate turnovers. They're more focused on reducing your likelihood of scoring within the half court as opposed to necessarily taking the ball away from you.
Exactly. One of the interesting things was that you mentioned about how they've forced teams into inefficient shots. They were sixth in the league in not allowing teams to shoot from 0 to 3 feet. So we call that defensive field goal attempt percentage. Third in defensive 3-point attempt percentage, and then seventh in percentage of defensive threes that were from the corners.
Oh.
So the most efficient shots in basketball, they weren't giving them up, and they really weren't giving up free throws. So, yeah, you really couldn't get anything easy against the San Antonio Spurs, which is pretty funny. People talk about how they moved from defense to offense. Now the defense is still there; it's still killing it.
Yeah. And touching on the 3-point thing, it wasn't just corner threes that they defended well. They were first in defending above the break threes in terms of true shooting attempts, which is another aspect of the XPPS that Ian has at the lovely Nylon Calculus.
Yeah, we can't pimp them enough. They're awesome. If you have time to watch us, you have time to read them. It's not even a hint. Just do it.
Yes. You will like it.
Your brain will feel really happy.
Yeah, the other
Your
thing
mom
they
wants
did.
you to.
Yes, she does. And
Your mom wants you to read nylon calculus.
It's either that or eat all your vegetables before dessert. You know, I like that, but most people prefer the dessert. So
anyway,
yeah.
Back on
diversion
topic.
Aside,
back about basketball. That's about vegetables.
Another thing that they did extremely well was limit fouling.
Yes.
So they were third in the league in defensive free throw per field goal attempt.
Right.
Meaning they basically didn't foul you. They didn't take you to the free throw line. They didn't give you the easy out.
Nope. Yeah. So, and that's pretty remarkable because not only are they doing so well at contesting these shots and having a solid interior defense, they're doing it without fouling.
Yep.
So that it's huge. There's a legitimate argument to make, and most people aren't making it, but there's a legitimate argument that they had the best defense in the league last year.
I think it's a very legitimate argument.
Yeah, it's close.
Yep.
And then when you couple that with a Spurs offense, it's just really not fair. This is a team that was fourth from 0 to 3 point, or not 0 to 3 point, 0 to 3 feet field goal percentage, second from 3 to 10 feet, ninth from 16 feet to the 3-point line, and then first by a pretty big margin in 3-point percentage. Basically everywhere you can take a shot, they're top 10.
Yep. Gotta love those open looks.
Yeah. That's the whole point of that offense. Move the ball around, move people around. If a shot's open, you're going to make it.
Yep.
And that's kind of the principle that guides that offense. So then this shouldn't really come as a surprise that they were third in offensive points per shot and that they're the second highest effective field goal percentage. You know, they really had a great offense, made free throws.
Yep.
Didn't really get fouled very much, but they made their free throws.
Yep.
And they did us a really great job at scoring.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's interesting is they were top five and top 6 in corner 3-point shot attempts in terms of percentage of their overall shot attempts, and 6th overall in the field goal percentage from corner threes.
Yes.
On top of it, they were first in above the break
threes,
3-point percentage. So you're talking about a team that's just consistently shooting extremely well from every area of the court. And I think they were even, we touched on it earlier, third in the restricted area field goal percentage.
Yeah, I'm getting fourth from 0 to 3 feet, but that's pretty close.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, in terms of literally anywhere on the court that isn't from 10 to 16 feet, they were killing you.
Pretty much. Much.
And on top of it, they were fourth in defensive rebound percentage. They didn't give up offensive boards. So the defense was great. The offense was great. The defensive rebounding was good. What wasn't good?
Well, it's not necessarily a bad thing per se, but they were only 24th in offensive rebound rate and 27th in terms of getting to the line free throw per field goal attempt.
Right.
Part of these are systematic, though.
Yep.
And this is where, not to harsh on anybody who's a little too eager to just take stats at their face value, but context matters a lot.
Context!
Exactly. As we noted earlier, the Spurs made a lot of their shots.
Yeah.
So their offensive rebound rate was obviously going to be smaller than you would expect normally. On top of it, they're really good on defense. They wanted to get back and make sure that they were set. So the offensive rebound wasn't really something that they necessarily emphasized to a high degree.
Exactly.
And the free throw per field goal attempt thing, I think that's more to do with the ball and player movement all the time. They got such good open looks
you don't really
that
need to get
they
fouled.
didn't really have to force a lot of things and draw fouls.
Exactly. Another thing that wasn't exactly a strength, but also was largely a systemic, I don't want to say a drawback, but kind of, sort of, was that they were really average at taking care of the ball. But with that much ball movement, that's kind of going to happen.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And if you play it too close to the vest, you're not going to get some of those great Manu passes.
Right.
John Wooden even used to say, like, you don't want your players playing afraid of making mistakes.
Exactly.
So, there's a fine balance. Obviously, you don't want to be turning the ball over too much. But also, if you're, pushing the pace, you're really trying to put the defense on its heels, whether that's in a transition, a secondary break, or just a movement-heavy offense like the Spurs. There's going to be turnovers. It's going to happen. But as shown by their offensive numbers and the fact they won the championship again, they clearly are doing fine, regardless of it.
They are good. They are really good.
Yeah. So, Will, this might be one of those situations where a championship team actually came back almost fully intact.
Not almost. They came back fully intact.
Exactly. Well,
no, almost.
Maybe minus about 10 pounds of Boris Diaw.
Exactly.
He slimmed down a little bit. But talk a little bit about their additions. Anybody kind of stand out?
New assistant coach Ettore Messina.
Yes.
This guy is a legend.
Yes. Like David Blatt. Yeah, like David Blatt, it's amazing he hasn't really gotten a head coaching position in the NBA before this.
Exactly. No, Messina's killed it in Europe. Just demolished pretty much everything. And he fits in really well systemically with them. His big thing is ball and player movement, kind of like the Spurs. In fact, one of the things I remember watching an interview with him, he says, on every possession, I try to get the ball in and out of the post or from strong side to weak side and back to strong side because that makes the defense move. And that's really a big part of the Spurs offense is moving that ball around, making that defense move. So he fits in very well there. Might be a successor to Popovich.
That would be interesting.
That would be really cool.
I think Pop is going to hang in a little bit longer.
Oh, yeah. It's not going to be this year, but in like 3 or 4 years, in our 2020 team previews, don't be surprised if we're saying
we might be talking about Ettore Messina, or maybe, and this would be monumental, Becky Hammon, another assistant coach that was added. The big brouhaha is that she's a female coach. But anybody who looks past BS gender stuff would know that she was a killer player in the WNBA. A 16-year career. She went undrafted, but was a multiple-time All-Star.
Teams, she was just like
one of the best players in WNBA history. And she knows her stuff. She knows how to play basketball.
The Spurs had her in last year in practices and stuff. And now it's just official. So I wouldn't really call this an addition because she was already there. But it's formally, she's on the staff now. That's really cool. They really added up on their coaching staff here with these two people. And it'll be really interesting to see because Messina has connections, right?
Oh, yes.
Here, there, and everywhere. It'll be interesting to see if and we probably won't even really know. Because the Spurs are a very, hush-hush, secretive sort of team. They operate kind of in the shadows a bit. But I wouldn't be surprised if he played some sort of a big role in their scouting and drafting process.
I wouldn't be surprised either.
Because he knows a lot of people out there. I wouldn't be surprised if they hire one of his buddies to be a scout.
Yeah.
Some stuff like that.
I wouldn't be shocked.
Now, that's the coaching side of the house. There is one new guy.
Oh, yes.
And we like him, and we kind of screamed like schoolgirls on draft night.
I scared my wife.
I scared my mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, flashback to the NBA draft a little while ago. Players are coming off the board. Spurs are coming up. the number one player I wanted on the Spurs was my man Kyle Slow-Mo Anderson. And as the players are ticking off, I was actually chatting with Will during the draft, and we were like, this can't possibly happen. There's no way these other teams are going to let the Spurs get Kyle Anderson. And sure enough, the pick before wasn't Slow-Mo, and the Commissioner Silver went up to the mic and announced Kyle Anderson, and I'll admit I screamed really loud out of joy, and my wife had to come out of the office and check on me to make sure I hadn't died or something.
Yeah, I woke my mom up. She didn't like that very much.
Yeah.
But she can deal with it. Slow-Mo got drafted by the Spurs, man.
Yep. Slow-Mo is the perfect fit for the Spurs, and vice versa. They're a perfect fit for him. People kind of compare him to Boris Diaw because he's a ball-moving, really intelligent, passing guy who's about 6'8", 6'9"-ish, not unlike Diaw. But in my opinion, his game's more like a 6'8", 6'9" Andre Miller type who's already improved a fair amount in terms of three-point shooting. He's not an overly quick guy. He's not going to beat you with a lot of flashy moves. He's just going to textbook your ass to grass.
Yeah.
He's set up perfectly in terms of feints and change of pace, change of direction. He's going to make it work. And in fact, a lot of people viewed him as a small forward, but Will and we think he was the best point guard in the draft.
Yeah, he's a point guard. At least on offense.
Yes. And the knocks on him are mostly athletic in terms of quickness and jumping ability. The traditional metrics when it comes to athleticism in basketball. But he's big, he's long, he's got a nice wingspan, and he's really smart. So I have no doubt he'll be able to function well within a team defense, especially a team defense like the Spurs.
Yeah, and he's the kind of guy where if he has to sag off a little bit to stay in front of a guy, so what? He has a 7-foot wingspan?
Yeah,
somewhere in there.
He'll be able to operate fine.
Yeah, I think he can handle. I think he can handle a point guard.
Oh yes.
On defense, and if not, then you can put him on. You can put him 1 through 4 on defense. Pretty okay. No, I loved that pick. That was one of my favorite picks in the draft. And really, the Spurs are probably one of 2 or 3 franchises that would actually know what to do with this guy.
Yeah. He's the perfect fit for them, in part because their system relies on players being fairly versatile in terms of the roles that they can run, whether it's an off-ball finisher and shooter off cuts and off screens, spot ups, etc., or an initiator of the offense. Think along the lines of Manu, George Hill, Patty Mills, Marco Bellinelli, Gary Neal the last few years.
Yep.
You've got to be able to do a little bit of both. And Kyle Anderson can do a little bit of both. And he's 6'8", 6'9"-ish. It's a nice thing
That's
to
a nice
have.
thing to have, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, in fact, I think Kyle Anderson's one of the best talents in this entire draft.
Yeah, I agree.
If utilized correctly, and I think the Spurs will.
And that's the key word there, if utilized correctly.
Yes.
Kyle Anderson on the Spurs is 50 billion times the player of Kyle Anderson on the Magic. Or
the
Kyle
Sixers,
Anderson on the Sixers, or Kyle Anderson on the Celtics, or Kyle Anderson pretty much anywhere that doesn't have a lot in common with the Spurs.
Yeah.
Just because of the way that the systems work, based on the way they view player skill sets and how to mold to them. Kyle Anderson here, this is the best place he could have gone. I think there was a video of him saying, where do you want to get drafted? Well, they're a little too late, but I want to go to the Spurs. I mean, it kind of sucks that you lost half of the money that you were expecting to make, but you got to go to the Spurs, dude. You should be happy.
Yeah, he's going to have a fun career, playing with Kawhi long term, and hopefully some of these other guys like Jean-Livio Charles, Adam Hanga, Ryan Richards, all the international guys that the Spurs kind of have stashed overseas at the moment, if they ever come over and continue to develop. They've got a lot of young talent, young promising talent that fits their philosophies and their systems. And Kyle Anderson is a very nice player to have in your future when you're a team like the Spurs.
Exactly. This team, just to keep moving along, this team didn't lose anybody.
Nope.
Literally nobody.
Yeah.
Did any other team in the league do that? I don't think so.
I don't think so, and I'm trying to remember, championship teams that came back 100% intact. And
I mean, if
off
you
the
look
top of my
behind
head, I
me,
can't think
that
of any.
Detroit team back there, if you look super close in on that poster, there's a guy named Mehmet Okur. He's gone.
Oh, I love Mehmet.
Okur was awesome.
Okur was awesome.
Yeah, so that kind of the rosters usually do have some sort of change ups, either for salary reasons or for this, that, and the third. Trying to clear room to bring a draft pick.
The curse of me, as Pat Riley, it was either the curse of me or the curse of more that Pat Riley said when it came to the Showtime Lakers is after you win a championship, all of a sudden everybody on the team is like, well, we won the championship, so why shouldn't I get more money? Why shouldn't I get more touches?
Right.
Why shouldn't I have a bigger role?
Yeah. But I think that if anybody can neutralize that, and if any organization has a culture that is equipped to handle that, we're looking at them right now, and they're the San Antonio Spurs.
So that's a fancy way of saying their possession delta, non-existent.
Pretty much. Okay, speaking of differential, Josh, you've been doing a little thing called rest differential. For people who didn't see our Cavs preview, would you mind giving a quick overview of it?
Yeah, so it's my simplistic way of kind of...
Don't call it simplistic, call it awesome, because it's awesome.
It's a simplistic,
it's an
according
awesome.
To Will, awesome.
We're not gonna continue this video until you say, it is my awesome...
It is my awesomely simplistic way of looking at...
No. Rewind.
Fine, Will, fine. It's an awesome way of looking at just kind of the difference between a team and their opponents over the course of the season in terms of rest.
Yes.
So how many times are they playing 4 games in 5 nights?
Right.
How many times are they playing 3 games in 4 days? How many road back-to-backs are they playing? The differential is basically just the difference between their numbers in relation to those things and their opponents. And the Spurs have a -10 rest differential. So over the course of the season, they're going to be a little busier than their opponents.
How much of that do you think is due to the rodeo?
Actually, it's probably a fair amount.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize how much arena dates and times and other events influence the schedule. It's really important. The Denver Nuggets, for instance, in Denver, and I lived there for 5 years, the Broncos rule everything.
Right.
Like if you go to a sports store in a mall, everything is Broncos, and you might get like 1 or 2 racks that are Nuggets.
Yep.
So when the Nuggets season start, they usually start a very road-heavy schedule at the start of the season to avoid any crossover with Broncos games or the lead-up to Broncos games because people don't really care about the Nuggets during that time period.
Exactly.
So the same kind of holds true for a lot of arenas around the NBA. And, there are events like the rodeo and so forth that are going to have their own dates locked in that can kind of influence the schedule a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if that plays a role.
Yeah, I mean, to clarify, I think it's in November, December, somewhere in there. Where's it at?
Yeah, then that'd probably mean they'd start off on the road.
I think it's somewhere in there. Spurs fans, leave a comment saying what time your rodeo is.
Yes, please.
But
please.
for like 2 to 3...
Constructive criticism /
much appreciated.
Helping us.
Yeah, but for I think it's like 2 to 3 weeks, there's a freaking rodeo going on in the AT&T Center.
Yeah.
So, like, they physically can't play a game there. So they have, like, their road trip, a really long road trip. And anytime you get those really long road trips, those 4 games in 5 nights, or back-to-back. So those kind of start to creep up. And you get like a lot of frequent flyer miles, jet lag, and all that kind of fun stuff. So
they've got a -10 rest differential, but this is the Spurs and Gregg Popovich we're talking about.
Yeah,
here,
this is
so
Mr. DMP tummy ache.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned. They're bringing back everybody from last year. We already know what the bench can do. Pop is probably the most trusting coach of his bench in the entire NBA. And we're going to see Tim, Tony, Manu. Those guys aren't going to be playing 30 minutes plus. They're going to be the same sort of numbers that they put up this year, maybe even a little fewer.
Yeah.
And, with guys like Kawhi, Diaw, Patty when he comes back from the shoulder injury.
Maybe even Kyle Anderson.
And exactly, slow-mo. You've got guys who are available to take on a slightly bigger role.
Exactly.
So I'm not too concerned about the rest differential.
Yeah, this is the most well-rested team probably in the league.
Yeah.
This is a team where we give our future of the team 28 minutes a night.
Yep.
So I don't think rest is too much of a concern, but it's an interesting thing to point out, and it's an interesting thing to keep tabs on.
Yes.
As we go forward. So if you watched our last preview for the Cleveland Cavs, you'll know that we had a little segment we called 5 Questions. Pretty self-explanatory. I have a couple questions. Josh has a couple questions. We ask them to each other. We talk about it. We figure some stuff out. So, what questions do you have about the San Antonio Spurs, Josh?
All right, well, Will, one question that I think both of us are really interested in is how many minutes might Kyle Anderson actually get this year, and at which position? Are they going to play him perhaps a little more small forward or small ball 4? Or are we going to see him actually running some point, at least in terms of responsibilities in that particular
Is he going to be
role?
on the ball, I think, as well? Yeah. The good way to put that would be.
Exactly.
Yeah, knowing what we know about the San Antonio Spurs and the way that they evaluate player strengths and weaknesses when coming up with roles for them, and based on what we've seen out of Kyle Anderson, if he does get minutes, I would be very surprised if he wasn't running the offense. Because that's what the guy's good at. And that's what the Spurs are really all about is, making sure the players are doing most often what they're best at. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't think we see him off ball very much. I think the question is in terms of like box score position. I think it's kind of a dumb question that Pop doesn't care about.
I agree. I have the feeling what's going to happen, especially once Patty gets back, is we might see some stretches where you've got Patty Mills, Marco Bellinelli or Manu, and Slow-Mo on the court all at the same time. Right. And nominally speaking, Slow-Mo might be the 3, especially if you're looking at defensive stuff.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if you see Patty and Manu running a little more off-ball stuff and having Kyle kind of run the offense in those stretches. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that.
Yeah, no doubt. The more interesting question here for me is he going to get minutes? And that'll be interesting. That'll definitely be something to keep tabs on. You mentioned about how much Pop trusts his bench. Whether it's out of principle or because he kind of has to because his stars are like 100. No offense, we love you guys. But yeah, we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get 10, 12, 15 minutes a night just because everyone on the Spurs gets 10, 12, 15 minutes a night. But we might. Do you think he goes to the D League at all?
Oh, he'll probably spend some time in the D League, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he played for the
I mean they tend to use the D League pretty decently for their kind of toward the end of the bench rotation guys.
Yeah, they do. Okay, so I think that one pretty much covers that. We don't know.
Yeah.
The second question is one that I think other people will ask a lot more than we do, but It's how much gas do Timmy and Manu really have left in the tank? You hear this question every single year. And it might be a valid one. I'm not sure. I've been hearing it ever since I was a kid myself. I've been hearing it for a long time. It's never really been true.
Yes.
I think that they still have, at least for Duncan, I think there's still a good season here. One thing that I've noticed is that when players start to fall off, it's mostly due to a change in role.
Yeah.
Like when Scottie Pippen fell off, it wasn't because he became miraculously worse overnight. It was more because the roles and expectations of him changed. And I don't think that the roles and expectations for Timmy and Manu are really changing all that much. And I don't think that a year is going to make a major difference in terms of their performance.
And, if you look over his career with Timmy, I haven't specifically done it with Manu, but I wouldn't be surprised. But if you look over Timmy's career on like a per 36 basis, he's very consistent across the board. It's more a minutes thing than anything else.
Which when you have Boris Diaw and you have Matt Bonner and
you got Tiago, you've got Baines.
You have Baines, exactly. You've got
even Matt Bonner throwing the threes up.
Exactly. They've got a really nice big rotation that they can throw down there. So there's no real reason to play Tim Duncan 30, 32, 33, 34 minutes a night. So if there is a major statistical downfall, I think it's going to be more minutes based.
Yeah.
Instead of these guys all of a sudden just getting gassed out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One thing that maybe people are thinking about this incorrectly. Maybe there is no gas in the tank because maybe they're electric cars.
Maybe they are Teslas. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And Teslas are awesome. And Timmy and Manu are awesome. So that's just logic, right?
That is logic. That is that grade A nylon calculus math skills.
I think that was basic elementary 1 plus
basic
1
elementary 1 plus 1.
But
yeah, a little bit closer. Sorry, Ian.
All right, so
don't mean to keep bringing you into this.
No, trust us. The math at nylon calculus is much better than what we just showed you.
The math at nylon calculus is better than actual calculus.
Yes, because you don't have to do homework.
Exactly, because you're not the person doing it. They are.
So.
Okay.
Here's another interesting question in regard to the Spurs this next season, and also somewhat going forward, given the aging of Timmy and Manu. Mm-hmm. Is Kawhi going to take on a greater role offensively?
I don't think so.
And if he does, how is he going to do in that expanded role?
I don't think he does. I really don't. He did a really good job in the finals, but you have to look at how deep this team is. Okay, you really do. This is a team that is stacked front to back. Who's going to take a smaller role? Tim Duncan maybe a little. Manu maybe a little. Danny Green isn't going to be taking a smaller role. Mills isn't going to be taking a smaller role. Parker isn't. So, I mean, for Kawhi to take on a bigger role, someone is going to have to, just by the law. It isn't like they're going to magically create 15 more possessions, for Kawhi to go James Harden. Which I would not want to see. No offense to James Harden. So I don't think anyone's going to be taking that much different of a role here. I don't think they're going to mess with it too much. Kawhi did really step up in the finals, but I don't see it getting too much bigger just because of how stacked and deep this roster is and how, the box score numbers don't look impressive, but that's mostly minutes based. I don't think Kawhi's going to be getting many more minutes either. So, I don't know. I think...
See,
I'm
going to disagree with you on this one just because it's the Spurs. So, I don't think Danny, Patty, Manu, Timmy, Tony, anybody on the roster, I think they all view their role as for the team.
I agree.
I don't think any of those guys is necessarily going to have a problem with maybe taking a slightly smaller role next year if it means helping Kawhi develop further. That said, I agree Kawhi's probably not going to get a whole lot more minutes, but I'm betting he gets, if anybody's over 30, it'll be him or Tony.
Yeah.
That said, I also think Kawhi's role is going to change somewhat slightly. He's not necessarily going to have a lot more usage in terms of shots taken or assists per se, but I bet you he's going to be spending a little bit more time as the initiator in offensive sets.
That could very well happen.
Yeah.
But I said I don't expect to see much of a change. Or I didn't expect to see a increase. I'm not expecting this guy. People are saying, "Oh, he's
not going to drop 25 a game."
And that's not a knock on Kawhi's skill set. It's more that the Spurs team culture and the way they do things isn't conducive to anybody dropping 30 a night.
Yeah.
Or even 18 a night. Yeah. Tony Parker is one of the best scoring point guards in all of basketball, and he can barely get 17. So, yeah. I think we mostly agree on that, actually. Because I don't see it getting too much bigger. It could change.
Yeah.
It's had a greater role and to be expanded, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets to do a little bit more bringing the ball up.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised also when Tony goes out and Manu's in if Manu moves a little bit more off ball than he generally does and has Kawhi kind of take a little bit more control in terms of initiating the sets and the actions within that second lineup.
Yep. So on to the next question, and it's the big question, is can this team repeat for the first time? I think we have the same answer here.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
they
can. They can, yes.
They very well can.
Yeah. They can do it.
It's funny, and we touched upon this before, but every time the Spurs have been successful, every single time, the next year, they were counted out by most people.
Yeah.
And, even if you go back and you look through, there were very small... One thing people sometimes forget about basketball, and Jeff Van Gundy, I believe, is the one who kind of said this, is a make-or-miss league.
Yep.
And there's a lot of context that goes on, and there's a lot of randomness and luck involved.
Oh, yeah.
And if you go back through and you look at that 0.4 second Fisher shot, if that doesn't go in, Spurs might have had a repeat right there. Mm-hmm. If you have the foul on Dirk that Manu had in Game 7 against the Mavs that one year, if that doesn't happen or if Dirk misses, they don't go to overtime, the Spurs win, they go on to the finals.
Right.
Who knows? The Ray Allen thing, and I love Ray Allen, so it's kind of like a bittersweet thing for me. But the Ray Allen three, that was an incredible amount of luck involved. To Ray Allen's credit, he practiced that shot, so he's
we mentioned it in the Cavs preview.
Backpedaling without
Ray Allen's
looking
basically
down.
got OCD.
Yeah, and
not a medical
to
diagnosis.
Chris Bosh's credit, he had the presence of mind to pass it to Ray Allen in such a situation. But, I think it's not that far-fetched to have imagined the Spurs with more than one back-to-back by this point, if other things had fallen their way. And like we mentioned earlier, maybe Manu and Timmy aren't gas guzzling cars in this metaphor. They're freaking Tesla cars, all electric. So at the very least for this season, I think they have a really good shot at getting back to the finals and winning.
And then the last question is, the Spurs kept everyone from the championship run, but are they going to have them all by the end of the year? Any trades? I don't think so.
No.
Do you? I think this roster is pretty much set.
Yeah, well, that's another thing that I think has been really beneficial for the Spurs over their long stretch of success is they value continuity. Even if, some of the tertiary pieces move around, the core has been consistent for a long time. Before Tony and Manu came in, I mean, you still had... Peter Holt as owner, Popovich as coach, Buford in the front office, and then you had Timmy and David Robinson beforehand. And then, you've had Timmy, Manu, and Tony for so long that it's central to their identity, I think, is continuity. So I wouldn't really see any trades go down, at least any major ones. Maybe something like the Nando De Colo for Austin Day.
Austin
deal.
Day is probably the most likely to go.
Yeah, something like that. But barring injury, I don't foresee them ending the season with, without everyone being the same.
Yep. Yeah, no.
Ready for the 20-50-80?
Yeah, let's do this. So, if you didn't watch our Cavs preview, we have a thing we like to do called 20-50-80. But it basically is, it's a way for us to make crazy predictions without it coming to bite us in the ass. So, our 20 is a prediction that's 20% likely. Our 50 is a prediction that's 50% likely. It could go either way. Our 80 is a prediction that's 80% likely. And the cool thing with all of this is that if none of them happen, we're totally fine because we acknowledge there's a probability that they don't happen.
Yep.
So,
yay!
Yay! Covering our asses.
So, Will.
Yeah.
What's your 20%?
My 20% is that Kyle Anderson makes an all-rookie team.
I would love that.
I would love that, too. I wouldn't be surprised for him to get 15, 16, 17 minutes per game because, Pop likes to play his bench guys. With his skill set, I wouldn't be surprised for him to make the team and play often. And in that, if he's going to be a ball handler, which you would bet Pop would have him do that, he's going to get assists. Because he's so big, he's going to get rebounds. And because he's so crafty, he's going to get some points. He isn't a scorer per se, but he's good enough to get some points. So he is probably the closest thing right now. I don't want to say a triple-double threat because he's not going to get the minutes to do so because, for one, he's a rookie. For two, he's going to be a bench player. And for three, he's on the Spurs. But he's the kind of guy who could really do, in terms of statistical contribution all over the board, some really cool stuff. And especially considering that those rookie teams aren't position dependent.
Yep.
He could easily make it in on that second one. I'm going to go up to 50?
Yep.
Okay. So my 50% likely prediction, I'll give a little context on this. There's a grocery store chain in San Antonio called the HEB. They are awesome. There are a bunch of... They do a lot of commercials with the Spurs. I'll put a couple links to them as annotations in this video. And
they
in
are
the description
wonderful.
box below. They are amazing. And I think we're going to see a Boris Diaw fat joke in one.
I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe something involving ice cream.
Fat joke. It could involve ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some fries.
Maybe.
French fries.
Ooh, there you go.
Yeah. So
smart thinking.
There are ways.
French fries and mayonnaise.
French fries.
Apparently,
and
the French
mayo.
love mayonnaise.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a Diaw fat joke in a HEB commercial because the entire team just, me and Pop ripped on him for it. So, it's pretty established. And then the 80% likely prediction is that everyone continues to be awesome, just like they've always been. And those Spurs are too old, people just get shut up yet again.
Yep. I concur.
It's going to happen. I'd make it a 100%. But...
Yeah, I would probably say yes.
But it's 20, 50, 80.
Yeah.
So in case
exactly.
a
we don't
freak
have
accident
20, 50,
happens,
80, 100,
I'm covered.
So.
Okay, Josh, what are your predictions?
All right, so I think it's 20% likely that Kawhi Leonard appears in more than one national commercial spot for a non-NBA product.
Yes, and I have an addition to that.
Yes.
Is that he will not speak at all during the commercials.
Yes, it'll be subtle body language.
Yep.
Is his milieu.
This is my Kawhi face.
My 50% is I think it's 50% likely that they repeat as NBA champs for the first time in franchise history.
Yep.
As I said before, I strongly think that they will this year anyway, but generally speaking, it's smarter to bet on the field because there's 29 teams and each team has some probability of winning the championship. The Sixers have a very small one, but the
Sixers would trade their championship for a second-round pick in 2096.
Huh?
The Sixers would trade their second-round pick. They trade their championship for a second round pick.
I don't know if I go that far,
they trade
but everybody has some sort of probability that they might win the championship, and so when you aggregate 29 teams, it's going to generally be higher than one team. So
exactly
that's why I put it 50-50, but I'm feeling very confident.
Yeah. There are other really good teams, though, too.
Yes, that's true. The Cavs are really good. Bulls should also be pretty good.
The Warriors are a dark horse.
The West has some really strong teams, too. So
yeah, there are some good teams here.
I'll hedge my bets a little bit, but inside my inner Spurs fan is like, yeah!
Yep.
The 80% likely is that I think the Spurs are going to finish the regular season once again with the best record in the Western Conference and with the first seed in the West.
I'm going to disagree with you on that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to say that I don't think it could happen because it totally could. I wouldn't be 80% certain on that, though, just because Popovich rests his players so much, especially like towards the end of the season. There are going to be some DMPs.
Yes.
And I think that Pop cares more about making sure his players are healthy and ready. And that there have been seasons where they've gotten like a second seed. And the West is so good. You have the Warriors now with Steve Kerr. That's a contender. I'll come out and say it. You have the Thunder. They're always in the mix. You have the Clippers now continuously getting better, especially with their additions for their big depth. Portland addressed a lot of their depth issues. Do I think they're a threat to take off the number one spot? No, but it could. There is a possibility. So there are a lot of really good teams in that conference, and I could easily see a couple of DMPs, like 5 or 6 or so, from a couple of their bigger players, kind of derailing that. And it's happened in seasons before. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't think it really matters that much if they're the first seed, second seed, third seed. They're still totally in this race.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't matter at all. But my counter to you, Will, is what do you think happened this last year? They had a lot of DMPs. They played, none of their guys played more than 30 minutes a game.
Correct.
And they finished the Western Conference with the number 1 seed. So
you're correct, but a couple of teams
I get your logic, and
really
I agree with it to an extent. But I'm fairly confident in thinking that the Spurs are going to be near that very top, and
I'm not saying
confident enough to say that they get the best record in the Western Conference.
I'm not saying it won't happen, and if someone put a gun to my head and asked me to pick a team to have the best conference, the best record in the conference, I'm going Spurs.
Yeah,
I'm just saying 80%. It's kind of high for me, but
I'm confident,
I get where you're coming from. I get where you're coming from. I like the optimism. Okay, so to wrap this thing up, is this team going to be good? Duh. Yes. Of course.
Extremely.
Absolutely. Affirmatively. Without question. With no doubts or questions of any kind, this team is a title contender. Yes.
And they will play some of the best basketball you have seen.
Ever.
Yes.
This is going a little rant. The San Antonio Spurs right now, it is a blessing to live in a world where they play basketball.
Yes.
For this current team. It is a treat. Okay. This is the kind of dynasty you don't see very often. This is the kind of thing, it's coming to the end. It pains me to say it, but there's only a couple more years left, And while I think that the Spurs are, going to be a very good team for the foreseeable future because the people they've brought in instill the same culture and values that the people prior to them had, as well as the people this team's. If I had to pick any team to make good choices for their successors, in terms of staff and front office and players, I'm going with the Spurs just based on how strong their culture is. But having said that, this particular iteration of this team, it's a joy to watch. And if you haven't watched many Spurs games or you haven't turned on to it or you think that maybe they're boring. I really implore you to watch them this year because you're not going to get that many chances to. And you're watching something that's already in the history books and is only going to be in more of them over the coming years and into the future. You are watching some of the best basketball ever played when you watch a Spurs game right now. And that is such a wonderful thing for us to be able to do. Just as a basketball fan, you know, and I get that it might have come across a little a little biased in this video, and Josh probably did too.
I'm wearing a Spurs jersey with R.C. Buford's name on it.
But for real, I implore you to watch a couple Spurs games this year. Just sit back, relax, take it in, and if you're a basketball fan, you like the Spurs, or you can at least at some level really appreciate what they're doing. So anyway, go ahead.
Watching the Spurs is kind of akin to going to like a top-notch 5-star restaurant where every plate is absolutely executed exquisitely. It's beautiful to the eye. It smells great. It tastes amazing. And your sommelier is Gregg Popovich.
Yeah. I was going to say it's like listening to the Beatles, but that works too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, with that heartfelt, sort of sappy-ish kind of thing out of the way, I think that concludes our 2014-15 Spurs team preview. So anyway, leave a like on this video if you liked it. Leave a dislike if you think we have a long way to go. Leave a comment based on what you think about the Spurs this year, or maybe some ways we can improve, or your thoughts on the video, but really just talk hoops. And hit the subscribe button if you're interested in more team previews. So with that, I think we're out.
Yep.
All right.
Have
Peace
a good
out, guys.
one, everybody.
Bye.